Hi again, folks. This is another Class N2 locomotive that I've been sent to have a look at, and it's an old Hornby Dublo locomotive, and it's an old three-rail one. This was sent to me by a chap called Crinan, and he sent me some three-rail track, which I've just dumped on top of my own track just now, just to see if this works. I think this probably does work, but just needs a bit of a service, I think. So let's put some power into this and see what happens. Well, it's going. So as you can see, it's running, but it sounds a bit grindy and there is a burning smell coming off it. So it clearly needs a good clean service, and I would imagine re-magnetised, and we'll see if we can get it running a little bit quieter and smoother. Okie dokie, let's take it to the bench. So when I was first asked if I would look at a three-rail Dublo, I was a bit, oh, well, I've never looked at any three-rail stuff before. So, but very interested to see it. And these old Dublo models are just fantastic. I think that they're wonderful old things, either three-rail or two-rail. But this is the first three-rail I've worked on. So, we shall get into it and have a wee look-see. So, nice big screw at the front. You can see the front of the locomotive there is a little bit worn, the paint's worn away a bit, and that's just screwdrivers going in to undo this screw. So we'll try and not rub against the front of the locomotive. I think this holds on the front coupling as well. There we go. Off she comes. And yep, the coupling comes off. And there we have it. So basically, with a three-rail locomotive, current is picked up through the chassis as normal, but instead of contacts on one set of wheels, you have this contact here, which hits that middle third rail, and that transfers current up through here to this brush, and this brush here is connected directly to the chassis. And the armature is vertical, and that's the magnet there. Let's get the other glasses on so we can have a closer look at this. And the commutator is a bit dirty. Yeah, so we'll need to get into that and get the brushes out, get the armature out. And we shall give it a clean, and we'll re-magnetise it. And hopefully that's all it'll need. I mean, these old models, boy, were they built to last. I'm not sure how intentional that was back in the day, that they thought, well, we'll build these and they'll last forever. I think there's a slight misconception about things that were built in the past, that, oh yes, they were built to last. They were built with the technology and the materials available at the time, and there's a good reason they aren't made like that anymore. So I think it's largely just as a result of the way these were built with the materials that they had, that they have lasted so long, because they are just a lot of metal screwed and bolted together. Of course, in comparison to modern locomotives, this thing is extremely poorly detailed. But to me, that really isn't an issue. And there's nothing wrong with the modern locomotives and their super detail and their sound effects and all the rest of it. That's all fantastic. I don't disrespect any of that whatsoever. But there is part of me that kind of thinks that these old locomotives are in some ways slightly closer to the real thing. This is all metal. This is a big piece of metal. It's screwed together with nuts and bolts. There's no flimsy plastic. There's no clips. I think there's something very tactile and very I don't know. I totally understand the guys that run lots of these old things, or have exclusively three-rail layouts, or exclusively old Dublo layouts. These things have a charm and attraction all of their own, I think. So yeah, I really like them. I wish I could have like a separate layout for them, so I could run the really old stuff and another layout for the more modern stuff, and an N gauge layout. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it, to have all that room? But anyway, I'm waffling there. Let's get this apart. Another thing that makes these locomotives so good is the bearing for the armature is adjustable. So if there's too much play in the armature, you can just screw that down and just set it just right. my Cardiff Castle's the same, and if you mess around with that, you can actually make the motor stop if your bearing's too tight. If it's too loose, the motor will get noisy. You set it just right and the motor will run really sweetly. So what's the play like in this one? So there's a wee bit play, so we could maybe get away with tightening that just a little bit. Let's take this rear bogie off. Okay, comes off. Keep that with that. Always be very careful never to mix up your screws on these old models. So I think the only way to get the motor out is to release the bearing at the top and undo this magnet. And if we undo this, I'm guessing that then just comes off. There we go. And there is the motor, which is very dirty. Back off this bearing at the top. Take that one out, take the magnet altogether. And out comes the motor. Quite a dirty thing. So that little nut that goes on the top of it. To be very careful with the windings, so I don't want yeah, it's tempting to think you have to go and clean all that out, but it's probably best left alone. So I'm just wiping this with a dry cotton bud initially. Alright, we'll get some T-cut on this, and as usual, T-cut is doing an excellent job of cleaning this up, which, considering for its age, is in pretty good condition. It's not got too much scoring on it. How old would this be? I'm guessing 60 plus years. It's older than me anyway. Down with the contact cleaner. Okay, ideally, you would really want to get these wheels off and get this cleaned up and get the axles cleaned out, but that ain't happening. Because the way these crank pins are designed, I am not pulling them, and I think there's far too much risk of damage, so I'm not doing it. I'm just going to straighten these rods a bit, and they are a little bit bent. What we will do, let's give this a bit of a spray, just so we can get that cleaned up a bit. So I'm guessing these should pull off. It looks like they should. Okay, that pulls out. Does the brush come out that way? Yes, it does. Ooh. There it is, on its spring. And out comes this one, which actually may be easier to come out this way. There we go. So we'll stick them in some metal cleaner. We'll stick this little bearing in the cleaner as well. It's tempting to dismantle the pickup here just to see what's going on, but clearly it was picking up power okay. I don't think it'll make any difference to the running of it. If when I get everything assembled there's still a problem with it running, I'll maybe look at this, but I actually think we're probably best to just leave this alone. We'll clean up what we can, but especially with old locomotives like this, you really don't want to go, oh dear. You really, I would love to get these wheels off and get this all cleaned out, but it's just not going to happen. But this has clearly been run on carpets. There we are, starting to see the axle now through all the fluff. There we go, that's that one cleaned out. That one's alright. Decades of fluff. What we will do is give these pickups a clean, just with some T-cut, and I might as well clean the wheels as well. Just picking out some more gunk from just inside there. We'll have a look at that. Okay, so another thing I want to clean is the brush holders, kind of just brass tubes that go through the chassis there and there. So I think what we'll do is get the trusty old contact cleaner and stick that in there and give it a blast. And same there. And then we'll shove a pipe cleaner through. Can I get it through both? Yeah, there we go. Just get that a bit more clean as well. And then we'll get in there with a toothbrush. Okay, so with everything all cleaned up, we'll put this back together. So we'll start by putting some oil in the bottom bearing. This is gear oil, and we shall fit the armature in there. Come on, in you go. Ah, goes in from this side. It's got a little groove. And then we shall fit this bearing, and again I'm going to put some gear oil in this bearing. So there's almost no movement in the armature at all, but still spins freely. You can see the wheels going round, so that's really good. Right, okay, fit the brushes. We'll do this one first. See if we can squeeze this in. Like so. Now, the brush is not making contact. Why is that? Okay, I've just taken the armature out again because fitting the brushes in from that direction, they kind of get stuck. But if I fit them from the inside, that seems to work. Because we want the brushes to be pressing against the commutator. So if I put them in that way, they are a lot freer. And then fit the armature, and I was forgetting there's supposed to be this little nut on the top here. That's looking better. And now screw down this bearing again. And I think the idea of this nut at the top of the armature is supposed to engage with that bearing, which makes sense. But it certainly wasn't like that when I dismantled it, so we're running with the nut loose at the top. Okay, that's looking better. Right, magnet. Like that. Like that. Okay, put the magnet in there. And that should be re-magnetized battery. It works. Right, okay, we will pop the body back on. How does this go in? So that goes on down there. The rear bogie. And there we are. So that's the Dublo N2 serviced and reassembled. Let's go and stick it on a little bit of track and see how it runs. Okay, so bear in mind this is an old bit of 3-track sitting on top of my track, so it's, you know, it's not going to sound the best, but let's just see how this runs. Pretty good. being able to adjust that top bearing makes all the difference in the world. It really does. If it's too loose, it'll get noisy. If it's too tight, it won't run very well. So you set that bearing just right and lock it with that little nut, and you get a really nice running locomotive. Okay, so there we are. That's this old Hornby Dublo 3-rail N2 class locomotive, serviced and running really, really nicely, I think. Until you get on a proper 3-rail layout, it'd be hard to tell, but it's certainly running an awful lot better than it was. Yeah, a real joy to work on these old things. You know, they're so simple, so well engineered, and yeah, this thing will be around probably in another 60 years' time. Alright, okay folks, catch you later.